You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy. And tonight, Roisin, we have another general election special. We're joined by Councillor Jim Ryan, who's running in the North Tipperary, Northwest Kilkenny constituency. So, and as you were saying, Roisin, when you were driving out to Tullaroan to your son's new home, who was the first poster you saw?
Jim Ryan.
Yeah. Jim's been a public representative for the last 25 years. He was first elected to the Thurles Urban District Council in 1999 as a Fianna Fáil candidate. In 2004, he resigned from the party and he ran as an independent, and he's been an independent since. He also contested the general election in 2007, and in the last local elections in 2024, in the Thurles district, Jim received over 2,500 number one votes, topping the poll in the area. And now Jim is throwing his hat in the ring in the new three-seat constituency of North Tipperary as an independent candidate. North Tipperary, Northwest Kilkenny, sorry. Jim, you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thank you very much, Paul Roisin. Delighted to be on it.
Yeah, Jim, Simon Harris there on Friday, he pulled the trigger, so to speak, on general election 2024. We know it's going to take place on the 29th of November. That's only 3 weeks away. It's a short, sharp campaign, but how are things going in the early stages?
Yeah, going very well, Paul. I have to say, a very positive reaction. I have a really dedicated, small enough team, very passionate about getting me elected. I feel I have a chance. It's a difficult constituency when you have the powerhouse of Michael Lowry in your own town competing against you. Obviously, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, the usual political parties. Alan Kelly is a big name here in North Tip as well. Unusual this time, as you said in the beginning, where we now have parts of Northwest Kilkenny after coming to very North, which is, how would I say it in hurling terms, very big rivalry between the two counties. So I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure what the thinking was behind it. But look, we are where we are. I'd love to be a TD for both constituencies. I think it's time for change. That's the feeling I'm getting on the ground. And certainly those people in Northwest Kilkenny, I know they feel very aggrieved at the fact that they're not going to be voting in Tipperary and for Tipperary candidates. So I suppose if I was in their shoes, I'd be very disillusioned, disappointed by it all. But I suppose I just want to get the message across to them that if I am elected for the area, I will represent Northwest Kilkenny as strongly as I will Tipperary North. So that would be the commitment I'd be giving to the people in that area.
And Jim, if we were to look at some of the big issues that are coming up on the doors, I imagine housing is definitely one of them. I would probably be definitely the top three. What would you assess the current government's record on housing?
Yeah, housing is massive. Even before this general election, I have a constituency office in Thurles, and a day doesn't go by where I have 3, 4, 5 people come into me in relation to housing issues. It's a crisis. No point saying otherwise. No point in sweeping it under the carpet. The government have failed miserably. Not just this government, but the previous governments before that. We have 15,000 people homeless in the country, 4,000 of them children. In my own area in Thurles, just Thurles town, just to give an example, we have over 400 people on the council waiting list for a small town, which is massive, to be honest with you. The council in Tipperary, again in Thurles, just to give the example, they built the first council housing estate in Thurles last year for the first time since 2004. So there hadn't been a council house built
in 20 years.
In 20 years, that's how far back we've gone. We've no affordable housing schemes in Tipperary. So if anybody wants to buy an affordable house, they cannot do so in Tipperary. It's an absolute failure again of the government. The middle class people are being completely left behind, because one of the big issues that's not been spoken about is the people in the middle ground, in the middle class, who are earning too much to go on the council waiting list and to avail of HAP to help them pay high rents, but they're not earning enough then to get a mortgage to buy a house. And lots of these people are in crisis. They're living at home with their parents, their brothers and sisters. They're in rental accommodation that they just cannot afford. There's just misery and there's mental health issues as a result of this. They can't live the life that they want to live because they're struggling to pay huge rents. And for budget after budget after budget, they have been totally ignored. So my opinion of the housing and the record of this government is that they have failed miserably. They've let down the people of Ireland in relation to it. The facts and figures are there, and no matter what the government or what spin they want to put on it. I know we have the first home scheme, and the Help to Buy scheme, but like the numbers availing of it is miserable. And it's an area that really has taken over from the health crisis is the housing crisis. And I don't know, Darragh O'Brien, what he's playing at or who's advising him. But he certainly comes across when you hear him being interviewed or watch him on television being interviewed, that he seems to have the issue under control, and nothing could be further from the truth. And listening to all of the political parties now that we're coming up to a general election, saying they're going to promising they're going to build 30,000 houses or 50,000 houses a year. God Almighty, where are they going to get the construction personnel to build?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it seems to be the ballpark figure that they seem to generally agree with is a minimum of, say, 50,000 houses need to be built a year just to meet demand. Is that realistic? And do we have the manpower to build them?
Not in my opinion. There's a huge shortage of qualified construction workers, whether it be plumbers, electricians, block layers, carpenters, and even nowadays, yourself, any new houses being built now have to adhere to the regulations regarding, insulating the houses properly, water pumps, heat pumps, air to water systems. Like, there's a huge shortage of skilled construction workers in this country, huge shortage of them. So where they're going to get them from, I do not know, because it's great and sounds fantastic that you're going to build 50,000 houses across the country. But look, I'm sure Roisin and Paul, like, you've often maybe rang a plumber or electrician for a bit of work to be done in your house. I'm certainly waiting months for a small little job to be done in my house, because you cannot get a plumber or electrician to come do work because they are so busy. So we have to increase the number of apprenticeships in this country in the construction sector. The problem is they're not being paid enough, so there's no incentive for anybody to become an apprentice, because the pay is so miserable. Then there's quite a number of contractors out there, construction contractors, who maybe would love to take on an apprentice, but just maybe can't afford to do so and pay the wage for them. So, I mean, if the government were really serious about it, I think they will need to incentivize people to go into apprenticeships, pay them a decent wage when they start off, to make sure that they do come in the first place, and also help maybe those employers, maybe with higher grants or some other tax incentive for them to take on more apprentices. Because I know for a fact that I'm also an accountant by trade. I do the books for quite a number of different electricians and plumbers and so on. They'd love to take on people, but they just can't do so because, they're small enough, they're competing with big, huge companies against them, and they just can't afford to take on employees or take on apprentices. So there's another area that really has not been discussed. And I think if that was tackled, it might help in some small way towards constructing the house that we require in this country.
Do you think then it might be a good idea, the way they did during the pandemic, is when they brought back all the healthcare workers back to Ireland, paid their air flights, gave them an incentive, a financial incentive to come back? Maybe we should put out that call again to bring back all our tradespeople.
Yes, an excellent proposal, because if you can remember during the Celtic Tiger, when houses were being built left, right and centre, like a lot of the workers came in from, Eastern European countries like Poland and Lithuania, Latvia, because of the shortage of the qualified people that we have here in Ireland. Now, unless something like that happens again, I cannot see any government, no matter who they are, being able to build 50,000 houses a year. It sounds marvellous, but it's unrealistic. And it really annoys me when you hear them coming on television being interviewed saying that this is what they're going to do. They're really, all they're doing is fooling the people out there. And actually, a lot of people actually are not being fooled by it, because they can realise and they can see that we just haven't got enough skilled workers to construct 50,000 houses a year. The money might be there to build them, but we don't have the personnel. So yeah, that's a great and excellent idea. It's something, that needs to happen and see will it work. But certainly the government, and whatever government is going to be formed after this general election, I think rather than stating they're going to construct 50,000 houses, I think they should be saying we're going to skill up and train 50,000 construction workers, new construction workers, to help build 50,000 houses. And I think the two of them need to be tackled hand on hand in order to solve our housing crisis here in Ireland.
It's the
Yeah,
same.
yeah,
It's the same with the healthcare workers. My daughter's a doctor. She's over in Melbourne. And, she said the wages are, the salary is much the same, but the standard of living is much better and the working conditions is much better.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, my niece is in Australia. She's a qualified radiologist. She's had plenty of job offers to work in Ireland. She moved to Australia first. Couldn't afford the rent. She's in Australia now, and she won't be coming home. Because she's now used to living there. She's met someone. They've had children. They've good jobs, and they've no intention of coming home. Whereas those people, if they had been offered decent wages and a cheap accommodation that they could afford when they initially qualified, she would never went over to Australia.
Yeah.
So I think what's happening is once they go on that airplane to Australia or Canada, wherever else, I think it's going to be extremely difficult to try and bring those people back. And why would you blame them? I mean, if they're going to get paid the same amount of money, they're living in lovely weather. A lot of young people of their own age, maybe they even know them through college or whatever the case may be, living over there with them. You couldn't blame them for not coming back. But it's a sad situation that's allowed to happen, that we're educating these people and they're leaving the country. And, the government have done absolutely nothing, in my opinion, to try and stop that from happening. There's a leakage there that's been going on for years, and it's getting worse. And, it's just something they have to tackle maybe at source, at college. And once these people qualify, you need to talk to them straight away. You need to offer them decent jobs, which they will get with their highly qualified qualifications that they have. But I think the big problem they have is accommodation. They want to work and live in the cities, and they just can't afford the rents. And that's where we're losing our highly qualified people. So I think the government, what they need to do is ensure that these highly qualified young people that we have in our colleges remain in Ireland. And I think the only way they're going to do that is to help them with their rent, and whether they have to bring in a scheme, something similar to HAP or other schemes, to allow these people to avail of them to afford rents. I think that's the only way you want to keep them in Ireland.
Bring back a tax incentive. Bring back a tax incentive, a lump sum. My daughter's a doctor. She couldn't even afford to live on her own, rent even one place on her own.
Yeah.
Or buy a new car.
It's crazy. I mean, you give the example there. I mean, one little idea I would have, just in relation to a doctor, like who wants to go into a GP practice, like are highly paid, or in my opinion, overpaid TDs get free offices, constituency offices all over the country. Why can't they give our new qualified GPs free GP offices or surgeries for them to operate from? Give them that as an incentive. Look, lads, we're going to give you a free surgery here that you won't have to pay any rent on, as long as you stay in the country for a certain length of period. And I think that's something, it's a new idea. You should think outside the box. You shouldn't, it's just something, maybe fresh, new TDs, if they get elected into the door, maybe could come up with a few ideas that the government at the moment are just not thinking outside the box.
Absolutely. And Jim, you're living in a rural area. The Thurles, it is a big town, but there's a kind of a big rural hinterland as well. As regards rural Ireland, how do you see things at the moment? Because some people feel at times it's left behind by politicians and policymakers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as you say, I'm from Thurles, but in my constituency we have the towns of Thurles, Tepmore, Roscrea, Nina, Newport, obviously now Orlingford, Freshford, Johnstown. Everybody feels they're being left behind. They feel there's mentality out there that rural Ireland has been left behind. That everything seems to be centralised in Dublin or Galway, Kilkenny or Cork, Limerick, whatever the case may be. Yes, and I have to agree to a certain extent that we are being ignored down here in rural Ireland. The typical example here is in Thurles, where we've been looking for a bypass for the town since 1958. We cannot get it because the government won't include it in the National Development Plan. But like even Campbellton, or even as I live in Thurles, the amount of derelict buildings, houses, former shops, former pubs that are closed down, just let rot away. It doesn't give a good image of a town or a village, and certainly it gives the impression that rural Ireland is not being looked after. And some people might say, well, how can you resolve that? Well, very simply, we in Tipperary, for a start, a lot of businesses in the towns in Tipperary, they're struggling. We had a pre-budget meeting recently where the Director of Finance is asking the councillors to increase the commercial rates because the County Council are running at a deficit. And in order to patch up that deficit, we're going to have to take in extra money from somewhere. And the first target is the business people who are already struggling with the high costs anyway. I think there needs to be something done with government to protect the business people, the shops, the local proprietors in every town and village that's keeping those villages and towns alive. We can't afford to close them. I met a woman there in the canvas last week, woman in her early 60s. She owned a local shop and a post office in the village, and she just said that they are absolutely forgotten about. She said that she should have retired years ago because she's making so little money out of it, but because she wanted to ensure there was a post office and a shop in the village, she decided to remain open. She said she's getting no supports from the government. Whereas she said if we were in Dublin or Cork, we'd be looked after, no doubt about it. But I suppose a couple of things maybe that might help, in my eyes, commercial rates. I mean, why should shops and in towns and villages that are struggling pay, the same level of commercial rates that shops in towns and big cities are paying? The commercial rate base is nearly the same in Kilkenny as it is in Tipperary. So we've Kilkenny City, which is booming. So the commercial rate base is the same in Thurles as it is in Kilkenny. And yes, we're struggling, whereas Kilkenny City is booming. I think free parking needs to be looked at. People will say, well, where would the council get their money if you introduce free parking? But the money should come from central government to, to bolster up the local authorities, with the shortfall of money that they take in as a result of a loss of income from parking or commercial rates. I think the central government should, fill that shortfall of money. And I think if we reduce commercial rates, if we introduce a bit more free parking, now I'm not talking about all day parking because we'll have lads parking there the whole day, but if there was 2 hours free parking in every town in rural Ireland, a lot less commercial rates to pay, I think you'd see a huge number of businesses remaining open. And the other big thing, which I have a serious issue with, is, shopping centres being constructed on the outskirts of towns. Like in Thurles, we have huge vacant units in the centre of Thurles. I mean, why aren't shopping centres being pushed into town centres rather than the outskirts of town where people are moving away from town centres? So I think a policy needs to be brought in there that if shopping centres are going to be built and if there is existing vacant units within a town centre, I think they should be pushed towards those vacant units in the town centre to keep the town centres alive, keep them vibrant.
Yeah.
I think that's something that has to happen.
Yeah, that seems to be the thing. There seems to be this obsession with kind of out of town planning, particularly around shopping centres. But if you take Thurles, if the centre is struggling, if you're going to build something on the outskirts, that's going to affect the centre even more. So there's a lot of sense in what you're saying there, without a shadow of a doubt.
But it's about the local rural community. It's about the local rural community economy. It's about local rural employment. It's about the rural, the whole rural community family values and bringing people back to the rural communities as well. There's life outside Dublin, the M50.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just give you one typical example which backs up what I've been saying. The very famous case of the post office in Liberty Square in Thurles, the main square in Thurles. 5 years ago, An Post made the decision to move it from the town centre to the shopping centre on the outskirts of the town. There was widespread, opposition to it. There was marches. I was involved in the Save Our Square committee. I was chairperson of the committee to try and stop that from happening. We warned what would happen if they moved it. An Post and the minister disagreed with us. They moved the post office to a lovely new premises on the outskirts of Thurles in the shopping centre. And as a result of it, the local hotel is down trade because people from villages on the outskirts of Thurles used to come in the bus. They come into the square in Thurles, they collect their pension, they go into the hotel maybe for a breakfast, they go into the local shops to buy their papers or sweets, wherever the case may be. They do their shopping in the town centre. And since that post office was moved, the news agency that was beside it has closed. Hayes' Hotel, the manager has confirmed their down income as a result of
Very famous
the post office moving. Yeah. So it was a disaster for that to happen. And again, it was just another proof that taking businesses away from the town centre has a major impact on existing business in the square. And it seems to be government policy that seems to be driving this away from town centres. Why? I don't know, because in Thurles we have a fantastic square. Nearly 10 million was spent on redeveloping the square. I'm not sure if you've ever been in Liverpool Square over the last number of years to see how it has transformed into a magnificent town centre. But that's no good if you don't have businesses or new businesses opening. And, you know, so why on one hand would you spend 10 million and on the other hand take out businesses out of the square? It didn't make any sense to me. And unfortunately, 5 years later, that post office building in the centre of Thurles there's a for sale sign up on it. It's still vacant. And there's nothing going in there. And on post, despite their promises that they would ensure that something would go in there instead of them failed miserably to deliver on that. So it just shows, that it's so important to keep businesses in the town centres to keep them thriving. But the one thing I will say, I don't want to come across as being negative here. There is fantastic shops and businesses in the square. Like we have thriving coffee shops now since we did up the square that weren't there before. We have new businesses opening up again now there, and there's planning permission after going up there on a number of vacant units in Thurles in the town centre. So I just wanted to, I suppose, put the message out there that Liberty Square is open for business. It's a really attractive place for anybody to come and open up a new business in the square. You'll be very much welcomed. And, certainly we would love to see new businesses coming into Liberty Square in Thurles, because it is a lovely square. It's a well-known square in the whole country from the GA or the Féiles or whatever the case may be down through the years. So, I would love to see more business come into Liberty Square, and certainly I think whoever would do that would be well supported in the town.
Yeah. And do you ever see a day that a post office may return to that Liberty Square? Is that battle still ongoing, or have
that battle unfortunately is gone? The for sale sign is up on it, so obviously on post have no interest in redeveloping it. They just want it sold. So look, it's good and it is up for sale. It took them 4.5 years to put the for sale sign up on it. It was just empty for 4.5 years. And look, we're all hoping that somebody will buy it and somebody will redevelop it into whatever type of business that will bring in jobs and obviously bring in footfall into Liberty Square. So yeah, whatever help the local politicians, including myself, can give to ensure a smooth transition from one post to whoever buys it, I think would make sense. But look, as I said already, Thurles is a wonderful town, and like any other town, I suppose, in Tipperary, but I'm very proud of the town. But obviously you have to stand up where you think something's not right. And down through the years, Thurles has a good reputation of, looking to protect our town, looking to fight for our town, and we wouldn't be happy when things leave the town. So it's a great little community, great town, and we're very unified and we look after each other, and that's the main thing.
And two, Jim, you're a rural community, and as we mentioned, and it's also a very much an agriculture and farming community.
Absolutely. We're very proud of our tradition here of farming in Tipperary. We have wonderful land here, in Tipperary. Like most of my relations, uncles and aunts and brothers and sisters are involved in farming. My own son, he's 17. He's been rearing calves since the COVID lockdown, and he wants to become a farmer. When he grows up, he wants to go to Cllr College. He's all researched already. So look, we all want to ensure that there's a future for farming. It's a tough trade, 7 days a week. You want to be dedicated. It's not an easy job. You want to love the job. But it's a very important industry in Ireland. It contributes hundreds of millions to the economy year on year, and we should be protecting it. And in my opinion, it's probably one of the most over-regulated sectors, within the country, to be honest with you. And how farmers are sustaining business is beyond me. But look, we have to protect farming. The tradition is there. We all will know the saying, no farmers, no food. So, nothing further could be from the truth. But Tipperary has a lot of farmers, a lot of excellent dairy and dry stock farmers who need protecting. And the EU are bringing in regulation after regulation, year after year, that's making it very hard for farmers to sustain a living. It's getting very costly now to be a farmer and to be involved in agriculture nowadays. But the love is still there. You can see that in the farmers. I'm an accountant by trades. You know, when I do the books for farmers and you bring them in and you have the crack with them, but you can see that they still have the love for it, and you can see that they want their children, you know, to take over the farm and continue on the tradition. So, look, I certainly, as a TD, if I do get elected as a TD, that's something coming from a rural background and coming from a farming county. You'd like to see farming protected, and you'd like to see it continue on into the future. But you would also like to see the farmers being paid and ensure that they get paid a decent living out of it, you know, instead of cutting it. And there, I suppose, the thing about farming is, one year you could have a great year, in particularly like dairy farming had a couple of right good years, but then the price of milk would go down and the price of beef would go down, costs would go up. So you might have 1 or 2 great years, but then you have a couple of years where you're struggling to make any sort of ends meet out of it. So look, we need to ensure that we protect farming, and there is a few, I suppose, issues. I'm sure you'll ask me next that I would have concerns of future farming.
I know that the nitrate derogation, it's a very big issue. But when we were chatting during the week, Jim, there were some other issues within the farming that you were seeing with your accountant hat on, particularly around farm reliefs and land and succession, which, you know, it's an issue that is not really being talked about.
No, and the VAT refunds for non-registered farmers as well. The rules in that were changed by Revenue in December of last year. Basically what that meant is that previous to that, farmers, if they weren't registered for VAT, they could claim back the VAT on the construction of sheds or installation of machinery and equipment, you know, cow beds or whatever the case may be. But now that has changed dramatically. Everything now has to be fixed to buildings or to sheds. That's going to cause a huge issue for farmers, because that means they're going to be down a huge amount of money. A lot of farmers would have constructed sheds and bought machinery on the basis that they would be getting the VAT back, and they would have only been financed for the level of the cost of the shed or the machinery, excluding the VAT, because the bank would know that they'd be getting the VAT back. So that's a huge issue. I think Revenue needs to be tackled on that. I think the Minister for Finance needs to ensure that that is reversed. All those changes are reversed, because maybe it hasn't affected farmers thus far, not because of the fact that maybe they haven't constructed sheds or put in equipment into their sheds, but the day the farmer starts looking for VAT back on the purchase of these equipments that they would have got VAT back on previously, it's only then that they're going to realise, oh my God, what's after happening here? So maybe a lot of farmers don't realise it, that those changes have come into effect. The other thing is the changes in the agricultural relief for farmers. Basically, what that is when a farmer would gift or a young person would inherit a farm from maybe a parent or an uncle, whatever the case may be. The rules up to now is that the person receiving the farm would have to show that they're going to be active in farming for the next 6 years. But now the new regulations that are going to be coming in, or proposed new legislation coming in January, says that the person who's leaving the farm has to show that they've been actively farming for the previous 6 years. That's going to cause an issue, because a lot of farmers would have maybe retired, maybe haven't been doing that with the land for a couple of years because they're waiting for sons or daughters or nieces or nephews to come to an age that they can take over the farm. And they don't realise now that unless they've been farming it for the previous 6 years, now the person who's receiving the gift of the farm will no longer be able to claim the agricultural relief, which means they're going to be paying a huge amount of money in either gift tax or inheritance tax. So it's just, either even thinking about doing this, I do not know. It does not make any sense. And again, it's just something that is coming down the line. It's not really being discussed. I think it needs to get out there. There needs to be conversation in relation to it. And certainly the government, whoever that may be, I think they need to relook at this and ensure that rules changes that are being proposed do not happen, because I can see serious issues here. Because how can a young farmer, after coming out of college, a young lad coming out of college, maybe 25, 30 years of age, gets a farm from a father, and then he's looking at 100 or 200,000 euro, depending on the value of the farm, of a gift tax bill. Crazy stuff. So this needs to be that. It really does. And obviously the succession, that's a big worry, because there is a lot of elderly farmers out there looking to retire. A lot of them were maybe bachelors, maybe don't have any children to pass on the farm to. And obviously then the young people themselves, you know, we need incentives for them to come into agriculture in the first place. You know, years ago there used to be premium payments that were tax-free to incentivize farmers, young farmers, to come into the industry. They're gone. So I think we need to introduce new tax incentives for young trained farmers, maybe low interest loans to help them maybe purchase stock or purchase, items of machinery like tractors, whatever the case may be, or maybe modernize the farm. I think low interest loans need to come into them as well. But look, there are three areas that maybe are not getting the same level of talk or news as maybe the nitrates, or other issues that are facing farmers, but I think they're equally as important. And I suppose they won't affect farmers until the day it actually lands on their desk, you know what I mean? So I think we need to be talking about those issues as well.
And I don't want to preempt anything, but if you are forced, because you are fortunate to be elected a TD for North Tipperary, West Kilkenny, if the government, whoever they may rely on independence for your support, I'm sure those would be the type of issues that you'll be
Absolutely, yeah. They'd be top of my table. But the other concern you'd have then for farmers is the new Mercosur EU agreement. That's going to come into effect as well, whereby obviously it's going to allow agricultural products and foods to come in from the South American countries into the EU market without tariffs, which was the case prior to this. So the worry is, will the markets in the EU markets be overloaded with cheap beef and cheap dairy products from South American countries that maybe don't have the same level of food control or traceability, and safety levels that the beef and the dairy products that we have here in Ireland. So again, that's something that I was very much opposed to if I got elected as a TD.
And also it affects our health as well. We're importing. We had Patrick Murphy and Patrick O'Neill on talking about on a previous program, and saying that we only consume 1% of our vegetables that we grew, homegrown vegetables. 99% of our vegetables is exported. The same as the beef is exported, and we import so many vegetables, so many beef. And as you said, it's not regulated. So are we exporting all our very good quality food? We're importing and eating imported food, no regulations, don't know what's in the food, and that is affecting our health as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, as I said, if this new EU agreement with the South American countries come into play, that situation is actually going to be worse, because we all know the very poor track record with farming in those South American countries, the damage they're doing to the rainforests. If they're now in a position where they can export more and more food to European countries, what's going to happen? They're going to need more land. Where are they going to take it from? The rainforests. So we're going to see a destruction of the rainforests as a result of this agreement. So not only will it have an impact on our agriculture, on our food safety, but it's also going to have a huge impact on our climate. And again, these are things you'd wonder who in the name of God are making these decisions, or why are they making these decisions, because it's just the knock-on effect of them is just alarming. You don't need to be Einstein to work out what they're saying is just going to have this untold effect, this domino effect, where it's going to really impact on everybody's lives, not just our lives, but our future generations. And it's absolutely sinful to see the rainforests being chopped down over in these countries. And I can guarantee you that once they're able to import or export cheap foods into the EU, I can guarantee you, as sure as we're sitting here, that the first thing they're going to do is cut down more and more trees in the rainforest, and the impact that's going to have on the environment is just it's really worrying to even think about it.
And Jim, you'd worked a lot with farmers, both as a county councillor and as through your work as an accountant. Do you think more could be done to make us kind of more self-sufficient as regards our own food? Do you think farmers could be incentivized more to maybe scale up production where they can, and that we can start eating more of our own locally produced food at reasonable prices, instead of relying on cheap imports from Brazil or wherever?
Yeah, you see that's the problem. They can't, because unless there's a complete ban on cheap imports, that's the main crux of it. Because Irish produced goods, they're safe, probably the most, how would I say, nutritional and the best tasting beef and vegetables and dairy products that's out there, but they're not cheap, put it that way. So if you're going to the supermarket and you see cheap beef from some, I don't know, Brazil compared to Irish beef, and you're struggling with your money, you're going to go for the cheap beef, unfortunately, at the expense of the Irish farmers. So unless there's something there to control prices in supermarkets, I think that Irish farmers they're not just in a position really to ensure that Irish people are just going to buy Irish products because of that price difference. And again, as I said, this Mercosur EU agreement is only going to make that situation even worse. For farmers, I mean, there's huge challenges out there with climate, as I said, lack of traceability, the rising costs, the supply chains, modern technology, everything is having an impact on farming. And your idea there with farmers eventually make us also self-sufficient, that we're all buying Irish vegetables and Irish beef. But unless all these problems are tackled, that will never happen. And like Irish farmers would obviously love if all their products were being sold in Ireland and everybody was buying Irish products. But realistically, unless all these issues are tackled by whatever it is, whether it's the EU or whether the Irish government, I can't see that ever happening. But obviously, you'd encourage people to buy Irish if they could afford it, or if if it's possible to do so. But unfortunately, yourselves going into any supermarket, I won't name them, but you have really cheap brands of products that are coming in from South America, coming in from Africa, coming in from Asia, China, you name it. And if you're struggling with your money, you're going to be tempted to purchase that product above Irish products. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the world we're living in at the moment.
And I think that is, they talk about, food. Food is political. Farmers is political. Consumers is political. Where we buy our food, who we buy our food from, the source of our food, who are the supermarkets buying it from. It is all, we consumers, and we want to be healthy. If we're not healthy, we'll buy because of the food we're eating. That's putting more pressure on the health board and the health crisis. So, do you remember back in the 80s, Paul, you probably were too young. You weren't even born, were you?
Probably 87 I was born, so anything before that I can't remember.
Well, it was before you were born. And
Okay.
I remember in the early 80s, it was like there was a little guaranteed Irish. So you knew that you were buying every product that you were buying was guaranteed Irish. You were buying it from Irish farmers. You're buying it from Irish producers. We should go back to that. There should be a campaign that there should be on food guaranteed Irish. And it's not, at the end of the day, the premises is on the government to make food affordable for the Irish people. So we are supporting our Irish farmers and fisheries.
And I'm old enough to remember the 80s as well. So yeah, I can remember those. I can remember the ad campaigns. I can remember even in school where they would tell you to, like, even in your school books, there'd be a section in it there about guaranteed Irish, and that's simple, like, and the ads on television. And it would actually make you buy Irish because, you felt proud to buy Irish, and it was kind of, you're educated to buy Irish, but you never see ads on television anymore really about that, But and the other thing, even that there's even misinformation in some of the packaging. You know what I mean? Like, it might have the Irish flag on it, but what that only means is that it's packaged in Ireland.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean the product itself is Irish. So I mean, it needs more. That needs to be tightened up an awful lot. That's really fooling people, because just because you see an Irish map on it, or Irish flag on it, that doesn't mean the product itself is actually, it comes from Ireland. So it's people are able to get around the big shopping, and the big, I suppose, conglomerates can get around all these loopholes somehow. But I just think going back to the 80s, a more innocent time, I suppose. But certainly growing up, I remembered all those guaranteed Irish, and with nearly, you'd be incentivized to buy Irish rather than buying, the foreign products. And I think there's no harm going back to those days. What's wrong with it? I mean, it's common sense,
And if the consumers knew exactly what chemicals and how and where the food was produced, they wouldn't buy them. And the more we buy Irish, the more it bring down the prices.
Absolutely, yeah, and sustain jobs, and
employment, local economy,
and saves the climate. You don't have big, ships
climate,
into Ireland with all these products. So I mean, it makes complete sense for that to happen. But again, nobody seems to be in the Dáil or politically seems to be talking about these things. Like, we're three people here sitting down having a discussion. Isn't it common sense? Why aren't our politicians just sitting down having a common sense discussion? Like, why can't that happen? Like, just the mind boggles by sometimes they make decisions that nobody can understand, and people say, "Geez, like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever." What they're deciding there, what rules they're bringing, the regulations they're bringing in. But look, I think we need a more common sense approach to politics, a cop-on sense to politics. I think, if you're there too long, I always say this even in canvassing, like no matter what area of life, whether it's sporting, soccer, hurling, jig, rugby, whatever it is, whether it's a business or politics, it's no harm to freshen things up a bit. Put in new blood, give new people a chance, see what they can do. And I think there's an awful lot of really, really good people that are running in this generation that currently are not TDs. I think, give them a chance. Let them get in, include myself. I'd love to get in there, come up with new ideas. We've been hearing it on the ground from people. In 25 years as county councillor, I can hear on the ground what people are telling me. And I think by bringing all that knowledge and that experience to the Dáil, I think will be invaluable. And as I said, I think common sense seems to be gone out of Irish politics at the moment in the Dáil. That's proven with the amount of wastage that's going on. You'd wonder who's making these decisions. And the other thing, I mean, we can talk about the bicycle shed and all this, but what really annoyed me, besides the price of it, we had our local TDs. I'm sure every radio station in Ireland had their local TD on and asked them about the bicycle shed. And what really annoyed me was the answer from every single one of them was, sure, I knew nothing about that. First I heard was when the news broke. That's not good enough.
No.
They're up with all. They should know what's going on. They should know where our money is being spent. That's taxpayers' money. Not good enough to say I didn't know anything about it. I mean, you'd be sacked from your job if if you're in any private company. If someone said, "Well, what happened here?" Well, I know you're sacked. It's just that annoyed me the most, more so than the actual cost of it, was that our TDs said they knew absolutely nothing about it. It may be the case, but that's not right. That wouldn't make it right. They should know what's going on, and they should know where our money is being spent. And even the minister for the OPW, he even said he didn't know anything about it. God almighty, is this the way this country's gone? I just don't know beggar's belief.
And would you say, Jim, things like that have kind of given you the spur? As you said, you've been a member of Tipperary County Council for over 25 years between Thurles Urban District and Tipperary County Council, as an independent member for majority of that time. Do you think that savage wastage of money and the lack of common sense has been something that has driven you towards running as an independent candidate in this general election?
Absolutely. I mean, I could have just taken the easy way out, next 3 weeks, put my feet up, watched all the debates and went and voted. But I just made a brave decision. Look, I have enough of it. I want to give people an alternative. I want to give them a choice. There's not that many new candidates running in North Tipperary. We seem to see the same number of people running again. And I think we need to bring a bit of respectability back to Irish politics and all, a bit of decency, a bit of common sense, a bit of cop on. Listen to the people on the ground. They're the people who vote you in. It's their money you're spending in it all as taxpayers on everything. It's their money you're wasting. And I think they've lost touch with the people. And as I said already, no harm in freshening things up a bit, put in new blood, younger people maybe with a bit more cop on, people maybe with a bit more of life experience. A lot of our TDs and ministers don't really know what it's like to struggle with finances, probably don't have a mortgage, probably don't have children in college or in school, don't know the struggles people are going through, and extremely wealthy politicians, some extremely elderly, and they're making decisions for the young people in this country. And I think, people like that maybe are out of touch. And I think we need more people. And like, I can only sell myself. And the way I'm selling myself on the door is that I have 25 years experience as a politician. I'm an accountant. I know how finances and budgets operate. And I think people like that is what you want in the Dáil. People who can hold the government to account when it comes to budgets and spending, not TDs that just vote yes for the sake of it and probably even haven't got a clue what they're even voting for in some cases. So I think, times have changed. People are angry. My worry is that maybe that anger will go towards people not voting in protest, which would mean that the TDs will get elected, because in order for independents to get elected, they need disgruntled public out there to come out and vote them in instead of voting in the government TDs. So I would encourage people, look, if you don't feel you're being represented properly, at least come out and vote for independence as an alternative rather than not voting at all. But I think there needs to be change. There needs to be new directive, new direction, people with new ideas, and a bit of freshness into it all, I think is no harm. And, that's just my opinion on it. And a lot of people agree with me when I say that on the door. And I think it's gone to a stage now where people are really fed up with what's going on. And I think there is going to be major changes in the next all, and a lot more independents are going to be elected.
Yeah, exactly. Roisin and I were up at the Dáil there yesterday, and we actually saw the famous bike shed. I there are viewers to keep an eye out for that video. And Roisin, I'll let you ask this question, because it's a very, very important question to you around the subject of the Defence Forces.
Thurles has an awful lot of Defence Force members and Tipperary, and you're actually in the middle of the 3rd Infantry Battalion, Limerick, and also Cork, and not far from Galway. So would you represent and be the voice for the members of the Defence Forces and the Defence Forces?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say I fully support them. I'm very proud of them. There's a wonderful tradition of peacekeeping in Ireland. I have friends currently over in the Lebanon, and I just want to pass on my good wishes to them and to ensure that they remain safe over there. The Defence Forces are really important for Ireland. As I said, we have a tradition of peacekeeping that I suppose every country in the world appreciates and knows that's how good we are at it. I'm really worried and concerned for the future of our Defence Forces. If you look at the army numbers at the moment, we're gone below the 6,000 mark, the lowest level in the history of the state. Paying conditions are pathetic for our Defence Forces. They're having recruitment problems. You see every day of the week. They're recruiting ads on social media looking for young people to join. They have retention problems. The paying conditions are really poor. And unless there's a serious investment, even in our naval service, the ships there are completely outdated. There's no real investment in the Defence Forces in general by this or any previous government. And look, as I said, I have friends in the army, and I speak to them when they do come home. There's four of them actually from Thurles Urban Lebanon at the moment. And I just want to say hello to them. But I really, really fear for the future of our Defence Forces unless the next government tackles the issue of the recruitment problems, the retention problems, the pay and condition problems. I suppose people's mentality towards the army, I suppose, hasn't been helped by the scandals that have been, I suppose, disclosed over the last number of years within the army as well. But there seems to be, the atmosphere within the army is very low at the moment. And I think the next Minister for Defence and the next government really needs to shake things up, start investing money in it, start making it the job that was seen to be very proud previously, still is, obviously. But there is a mentality out there that when you ask young people, will you join the army, and they say they won't. So we need to ensure that we have a future, a strong army here in Ireland, strong Irish Defence Forces here in this country, and keep up that tradition of peacekeeping that we've had for many years. And as I said already, I'm really proud of them, and I have great friends in the army here in Ireland Defence Forces. And absolutely, and as you say, Kilkenny's only up the road from us. Cork, I suppose the big blow for Tipperary was the closure of the barracks in Clonmel, which it still leaves a very sour taste in the people of Tipperary, and that barracks was closed. But look, we have a huge, in the Midlands anyway, we have a big tradition of the army and Defence Forces, and I would love to see that continue, expand, and have a really positive and a really fruitful future for the Defence Forces going forward.
And would you say that there should be a separate individual Department of Defence with a full ministerial position of a Minister of Defence?
Should be. I mean, there previously was, because we actually had a Minister for Defence in our Tipperary one time, Michael Smith. But for some strange reason, it was, downgraded. And I think it needs now to go back, that we do have a Minister for Defence. We all know the uncertainty out there with Ukraine, with Russia. with President Trump now in office, the problems with China and Taiwan, like North Korea getting involved in the war now in Ukraine as well, and South Korea thinking, will they join the war over there? So really uncertain future ahead for us all, security-wise. There's wars going on over in Gaza and Lebanon as well that are completely out of control. So I'm really would be concerned, going forward for, as I said, for Defence Forces. And I think we need to bring back our Minister for Defence with his department to ensure, for the sake of everybody, that people would see that this country is well looked after, we're well protected. We have an army that is has high positivity within it, a good atmosphere within it, and is funded properly and paid properly. And continue that on. And certainly, if I'm elected as a TD, that is certainly something that will be high on my agenda.
Well, I have to say, to your friends on behalf of Paul and myself, who are serving over in South Lebanon in Camp Shamrock with the 124th Infantry Battalion, wish them a really safe. They're coming back home shortly in the month of November to their families. Thank you for your service. And as a Defence Force mommy whose son was over last year and came back in May, I know what it's like to worry about them when they're over there. And just thank you for your service. We really are really proud of you, and you really do make Ireland proud.
You're here.
And Jim, when we talk about the Defence Forces, they come under our emergency services, but other emergency services, from when we were chatting there during the week, particularly in the fire service, the ambulance service, our Gardaí, you have concerns in that as well.
We have, I suppose, with the Gardaí. First of all, as you know, Tipperary was included in the Cllr, Limerick and North Tipperary district. Our Chief Superintendent left Tipperary, now is based in Ennis. Garda numbers have reduced in Tipperary. I was told 2 weeks ago that between Nina, Roscrea and Newport, there was only 6 Gardaí on duty for those 3 towns. And one night there 2 weeks ago. The Garda station in Roscrea is, the open hours has been reduced. Same with Templemore, it's closed more often than it's open. Again, we have a problem with, same as the Army, we have a problem with retention, with recruitment, with paying conditions. Again, we're all so proud of our Gardaí, but they're just not being treated. And we have a serious problem with Garda numbers. The emergency services, the ambulance, it's in crisis. It's been brushed under the carpet. I have spoken to the ambulance personnel over the last number of months, and they want this brought up publicly. It's in crisis. They are overworked. They are burnt out. The ambulance, because there's not enough ambulance crews and trained personnel, what's happening is if you ring for an ambulance here, just for example, in Thurles, tonight you need an ambulance, you ring 999, you could be waiting 2 or 3 hours, not because the boys are sitting in an office having a cup of tea, it's because of the lack of ambulances around the country on duty, because of the lack of personnel. They could be called to Wicklow. They told me that they were actually called, the Thurles ambulance crew were called to an incident in Wicklow one night because they were the closest available ambulance at that particular time. They drove to Wicklow, and about 3/4 of the way there, they got the phone call to stand down and go back to Tipperary. And what that meant was that there was no ambulance available in Tipperary or in Thurles because the ambulance had been diverted to Wicklow. But they told me they'd been diverted to Cork, Kerry, Galway, Longford, Westmeath, you name it, because of the fact that there's not enough ambulance personnel, burnt out. Young people don't want to join us because they can see the stress in it. Again, the pay is really poor for the type of job and work that they do. And you know, the chief ambulance officer, again, in the Tipperary district, he tells me he's on duty 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because he knows if there's a serious incident and there's no ambulance available, he is voluntarily getting into his car and going to an incident, because he'll know unless he goes, there might be someone there trained within a couple of hours, which will be too late. It's in crisis, and something has to be done about it. And again, we have a fantastic ambulance base in Thurles, loads of ambulances, fantastic modern facility, but we just don't have the personnel, and that's the problem. And again, the fire crews, same situation. You know, the paying conditions for them, they had to go on strike last year because of paying conditions. again, another vital service that we all take for granted. And for just some strange reason, the government, between the fire personnel, the ambulance personnel, the Gardaí, vital services, as I said, everybody takes for granted, they're just not being looked after. And it's just, but your mind boggles when you hear stories of what actually is happening behind the scenes that you don't realise. Unless these whistleblowers or these people within there tell you what's going on, you'll be shocked at the level of and the lack of investment and the lack of incentives for people there. It's just, there's huge problems, and it's really worrying. And I got another thing as well. Sorry, Paul. We were told recently, that one of the Garda patrol cars, I won't say where, it's in Tipperary anyway, that the engine has gone in it, but they've been told they're going to wait 6 months before they get a new car to replace it.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. So that's what we're facing, unfortunately, in this country.
Absolutely crazy, because when we see money being wasted on like bike sheds, and then we see other, massive tax receipts, surpluses, you'd be thinking, Jesus, can't we like get these simple things right? Because
And
if
we're
you're struggling with
supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world.
because if you struggle with the simple things, the difficult things, oh my God.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And I mean, as you say, like, we're in budget surplus. If the country was struggling with finances, they'd use that as the excuse that we can't afford it. But you can't use that as an excuse. It's just irresponsible. And again, it just proves my point that the cop on and the common sense attitude has gone out of politics. It really has. And I think when a minister has his mind made up, I just think the TDs, in my mind, I look at TDs that are maybe in the government. When a minister makes his mind up on something, they're saying, yes, sir, what more do you want, sir? Instead of standing up to him if they think genuinely to believe that a decision is wrong or would have serious implications. And that's the problem, when you have the same guys elected every time, they're just afraid to open their mouth, to be honest with you. But simple things like that, a replacement of a Garda patrol car out of operation for 6 months, what does it cost to buy a new car? 40,000, 50,000 euros? They can't get it. So even to replace the engine, how would it cost? 6,000, 10,000 euros?
Yeah.
They've been told they have to wait 6 months. God, I mean, this is, if you were a criminal, I'd say you'd have a field day if you heard things like this, So it's just, I don't know, just my mind boggles at times, and you'd be frustrated as a politician when you hear things like that, because you just love to be open the door to raise these issues, and you wonder why TDs. You look at the television when ministers are announcing really important things, and you look at the Dáil chamber, and there might only be 5 or 6 TDs in the Dáil chamber. And you say to yourself, what funeral are they at now instead of being up the Dáil? That's what people are thinking.
Or what are they doing in the bike shed? All the money in the bike shed. And that is actually very important point that you brought up. When there is something seriously being debated in the Dáil, where are the TDs? They're not there. So where are they? They should be in the Dáil. They should be representing. I blame the media for that. The media are not calling the government into account. And that is the role, the job, and the function of the media, is to bring the government and politicians into account.
Absolutely. And what's happening is you have TDs who are acting as overpaid county councillors. So instead of being up in the Dáil making legislation for the country, really important legislation that affects everybody, what they're doing instead, they're out on a road after being run by a couple of people on the road looking at a pothole, or looking at maybe a bit of flooding, or someone needs a bit of plan permission, and instead of being up in the Dáil where they should be and where they're paid to be, that's what they're doing. And that's the job of a county councillor, not a TD. It really frustrates me to see that going on. And the one thing that really, I suppose, in my mind, was the greatest disaster ever implemented by any government was the abolition of the town councils back in 2015. And I remember the day well, because I was 15 years as a town councillor, and a sad day for Irish democracy when Minister Hoban was standing up in the Dáil, giving his speech, signing off on the abolition of the town councils. And I counted the number of TDs in the Dáil that day, because obviously it was my job being taken away as a town councillor. I could no longer be. And there were 7 TDs. I counted them, 7 TDs in the Dáil, and Minister Hogan was signing away town councils. And that's representation of the lowest level as far as I'm concerned. And you know, it just shows you that our TDs obviously would prefer to be down fixing potholes than being up in Dublin ensuring that town councils or other very important decisions will be challenged. But certainly one of my I suppose priorities is the return of town council. I think that needs to happen. It was an unmitigated disaster that they took them away in the first place, and we're down so much money as a result of it in every county, because every town council used to get a block grant of say 2.5 million. We had 9 town councils in Tipperary. That's nearly 20 million that Tipperary is down every year because of that block grant being taken away because of the abolition of the town councils. So, yep, that's just another typical example that a very important decision that was made, a very historical decision that was made, a wrong decision that was made, and we had 7 PDs in the Dáil debating with the minister at the time, which is sad reflection, really.
Unfortunately, we're coming up to the end of the hour, Jim. This has been a really interesting, it's really good to know what is happening in the counties around Ireland, and especially what's happening outside Dublin and in other counties. Jim, we're now still that we're going to be having our elections, and we've asked this to all previous guests and candidates. Obviously, you have been following the American election.
Yeah, I have. We have. Yeah. I wasn't surprised that Donald Trump won. I had a good feeling he was going to win it, but I was shocked at the level that he won it by. I have good friends over in America who told me that they felt the same thing, that he was going to win it. It would be very close, but they felt he would win it. But wow, I was blown away really by how much and how many votes he got. That's democracy for you. America voted. They voted for Donald Trump. You know, he wouldn't be on the same level as I would. If I was in America, I wouldn't be voting for Donald Trump. But he's now going to be the president next year of America. He's going to be there for 4 years. He has I suppose he has the Senate now as well as a majority of the Republicans. So he has good power now for the next 4 years to do what he wishes to do. He has a lot to live up to because he gave a lot of promises during the election that a lot of us here would say that there's absolutely no way he can keep the promises. It'll be very interesting to see whether he can end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, as he said he did during his campaign. But look, you'd worry, I suppose, in one sense, you know, what is he going to do with Ireland? He has promised that he's going to put in tariffs on the exports to America. There's, I think it's I read somewhere, there's 1.5 trillion euros worth of trade between the EU and America each year. You'd have to worry what would happen if he did implement his promise of bringing in tariffs. I'm not sure he will do that because of the amount of trade that goes on. He's threatened to do it, and he's capable of anything, to be honest with you. But look, you have to accept democracy. You have to accept that's what the American people want. They voted that way. As someone said, his logo was "Let's make America great again," but the logo was, but that person said it was, well, when was America great in the first place? So I don't know, to be honest with you. But
well, maybe what we need to do here is make Ireland great.
Yeah,
and that's why that's what we and make Ireland healthy again, like Robert Kennedy Jr. Make Ireland healthy, look after our farmers, look after our fishermen, look after our small local businesses, and listen to what the people are saying, and represent the people of Ireland and make Ireland great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to be concentrating on our own country and our own issues before worrying about what goes on over in America. But there seems to be this obsession with America, what goes on in America, who's elected as the president of America. It's huge. All over the world, everybody's obsessed with it. But no, you're right. I think we should be looking after this country first and foremost, and whatever happens as a result of.
But we need to work with America. America is a very political ally, and not just a political ally, but a lot of relationships are in America. The Irish built America, you could say. So we really do need to build. What happens in America always happens here. What happens in the UK happens here, and we need to build those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose what I would say is it is important, obviously, to have a good relationship with whatever president is there. And I just felt uneasy leading up to the American election, when you heard very senior Irish politicians saying that they hoped Trump wouldn't get elected. In my opinion, that was a mistake. What message is that sending to Donald Trump, that we have senior Irish political figures on media here stating that they would hope he wouldn't get elected? So that's a bad start straight away. I think our ministers should really have kept their opinions to themselves and said, look, whatever happens, happens, and we'll deal with it. And rather than saying they didn't want Donald Trump to be elected. But look, we have to deal with him. They may have to, I suppose, go back in one sense and try and make amends for what they said. But I still think, you know, I can't see Donald Trump implementing the threats of tariffs, because the trade between the EU and America and vice versa, America to EU, is just too much. I can't see him putting that at risk, to be honest with you. And I just think it's all.
We have American correspondents here now on the Irish Political Roundup, and he explained why the tariffs are for people who he really explained it well, why the tariffs, and you know why it wouldn't the tariffs possibly wouldn't happen here in Ireland, but they happen to certain countries who are abusing the American system and situation. We're going to give you the floor now to speak to the voters as to why they should vote for you and what you will do for them. So we're going to give you the floor the way we do give all our candidates at the end of the programme, Jim.
Great. Thank you very much, Roisin. Yeah, I suppose what I would first of all start off saying is that I'm independent. I'm a fresh candidate. I've 25 years political experience being a town councillor and a county councillor. So I'm not green to the area. I know how the political system operates. I'm an accountant by trade. I know how finances operate. I know how budgets operate. So I can obviously understand the finances situation this country is going through. I can make our government accountable to the way they spend our money, the way they take in our money. I can understand the system regarding the budgets every year, which is very important being a TD. I'm pro-business, pro-family. I'm very sensitive to the issues and needs of people. I've helped hundreds of people down through the years with various problems they have had. I'm very much involved in my community, very proud to be a public representative, very proud to help people, and I love helping people. I love being a politician. I'm 51 years of age. I have a lot of years ahead of me. I fire in my belly. I love my country. The country has problems, but we have a lot of money there that can be spent next year, particularly the Apple tax money of 14 billion. I think we need a new direction. I think we need fresh faces, new ideas, people that will bring a bit of respectability and decency back to being a TD, someone that will listen to the people on the ground, use a bit of cop on and a bit of common sense, and bring this country back to where people are proud to vote, proud of their politicians, look up to their politicians. I think the only way we can do that is by implementing change and voting for change, and voting for someone like me who will represent you as fairly, as decently, and as respectfully as I will do if I do get elected. And I'm just looking for one opportunity to get in there to show you all what I can do. And with my track record of working for people for 25 years, over half my life, you know, I have a proven record of doing so. And I would love to be your TD. I would love to represent you in the Dáil. You will get someone that's fully committed to being a TD, someone that will turn up in the Dáil, someone who will debate in the Dáil, will bring forward legislation, would like to be in government and support a government that will look after the needs of my people. I don't want to be a TD that will just sit in opposition, sit in the back benches, shouting and bawling and doing nothing. I prefer to engage with a government, work with a government to get things sorted in my constituency, to get money into our constituency. And I just like to think that, you know, if I do get elected and when the next government has been formed, that they will look at Jim Ryan and say, look, this guy is, yeah, he's someone we'd like to work with. He's respectable, he's educated, he's experienced, he wants to come up here and do good for his county, and he said he wants to go into government. Let's go talk to him. And that's what I want. I want to shake hands with whoever the negotiating team is, sit down with them and outline what I want. And if I get that, I will work with the government. But I won't be a walkover either for that way. But certainly I think it's very important if you are elected that you have influence. And the only way you can do it is by getting into government. And that would be my aim. So please, everybody in North Tipperary, Northwest Kilkenny, let me be your TD. I would love it. I would love to represent you. And with me, you're going to get someone that will represent you. And as I said, I may be at a couple of funerals, but I prefer to be up in the door making decisions that will have a positive impact on all our lives. And that's what you're going to get with me. So thank you very much for allowing me my time here tonight to speak to you. And please God, as I said, on November the 29th, people will place their faith in Jim Ryan. And as my logo goes, my campaign logo goes, let's get Jim in. And that's what I want, if possible. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Well, Jim, you know, I find it really fascinating speaking to you tonight, finding out what's happening in Tipperary and in Thurles. So regardless of the outcome, will you come back on and join us on the Irish Political Roundup?
Absolutely, anytime, yeah, no problem at all.
And we'd love to have you on as well with our farming, to Patrick's. I think you'll make a great contribution to our farming program and our fisheries program. So we'd love to have you on.
Your accountant background as well would be huge.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, guys. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And if there's anything that you want to put the floodlights on with any issue that you want to make public, please do. Don't wait for us to call you. You get in touch with, you've got Paul's and my numbers. Get in touch with us and we'll get you on, and we'll put the cameras and the floodlights on any issue that you would like raised for Tipperary.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And hopefully next time I'll be talking to you, I'll be a TD. Please God.
Well,
Thank you very much. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good night.
Jim Ryan, Independent County Councillor and candidate for the 2024 elections. The very best of luck, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy canvassing to come on and join the Irish Political Roundup tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are delighted to introduce the Irish Political Roundup Community Notice Board.
Task Academy, which is run by Jeanette Delahunty, who was on the Irish Political Roundup very recently, talking about the subject of dyslexia. Video we'd highly recommend our viewers to check out. It's holding an educational event this coming March in 2025 on the 22nd and 23rd on the subject of neurodiversity in education, the Trauma Connection Conference. So it's taking place, as I said, on the 22nd and 23rd of March in the Ormond Hotel in Kilkenny from 9 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. They will bring you a number of speakers and workshops to add value to your role as a parent, carer, or professional. And this is creative family solutions. And this, as it says, Roisin, I think is a course that anybody who have a particular interest in this area would find it very, very beneficial. There's going to be some fantastic speakers speaking on those 2 days.
Especially as we have been covering neurodiversity here on the Irish Political Roundup. Remember, go to the Task Academy website and book your early bird tickets.
And remember, spaces are limited. Book early and you won't be disappointed.